Jimmy Lakey on the radio. I got my coffee and cream. Jimmy's on the air. Wake up and start your day. Now go and tell all the neighbors, yeah. Then crank up the radio. There's infotainment, brilliance to get you on your way. Wake up and start your day with Jimmy Lakey.
Well, top of the morning to you, everybody. How the heck are you? Jimmy Lakey, as you can see on the screen, live from Dallas, Fort Worth, the Big D. How's everybody doing? This will be my I got one more broadcast from here. One more broadcast from Texas tomorrow that I'm planning to, good Lord willing. I'm coming back to Colorado, back home tomorrow afternoon, so I should be there. But next week I'll be back in the studio. I'll be coming back here a little bit more and more the next several weeks, but I'll do as many live shows as I can through the road. But good to have you here. Wherever you're joining us from across America, the crowds begin to gather. What are we at? 11:01 on the East Coast, of course, 9:01 in the Mountain Time, 9:01 in the Central Time Zone, 8:01 in the Mountain Time Zone. Wherever you're listening, whatever platform you're on, we love to have you. And good morning, Twitter. Twitter is starting to gather around the daily update of Lakey being unleashed. Facebook.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page, Facebook.com/Red Wave America, Facebook.com/The Media Equalizer, and also don't forget the YouTube. And the Rumblers are also looking at the counter, starting to show up there one by one. Instagram, all you little hipsters out there. Good morning. Glad to have you all here. So wherever you're listening, sound off, tell us hi in the chat room. All of the platforms are able to interact with us. Obnoxious Scott has already posted up. He gets the first post award of the morning. It says, sure happy it's Thursday. Well, I'd be happier that it's Friday, but I'm happy that it's Thursday as well. At least it's not Monday. That's the key. At least it's not Monday. All right, if you're new to the program, I have been unleashed from the bonds of corporate radio. Some of my friends say I'm more like unhinged, but that's between my therapist and I. Don't judge me. But unleashed from the bonds of corporate radio. So we gather here together every morning, and usually I'm in the Lakey Entertainment Towers in a studio that we refer to as the House of Lakey. But because I'm on the road dealing with some family health issues of my parents get old, let's just say that. Because of that, I'm in the Dallas area for the last several days and broadcasting live from a very esteemed art-infested hotel room. That's where we're at right now. I'm always amazed with the COVIDs and all the things. People refer to. I was talking to a lady yesterday. She says back during the days of the pandemic, I refuse to call it that. I call it the COVIDs. And back in the days of the COVID or the plandemic, figure out how you want to say it. But back in the days of the pandemic, I was always amazed at how many people started doing all their videos like Fox News hits, CNN hits from home. And I was always fascinated by the backgrounds that people chose. I could tell when someone was in a hotel room as a connoisseur of hotels, business casual travel, fancy travel. I stay in them all, my friends. I've stayed in them all. And you can always just tell a hotel. A hotel looks like a hotel. You would know this is a hotel if you know what's happening out there. Well, I'll also tell you that I was amazed at how many people would set up shop during the COVIDs in their kitchen for a live feed as an expert on Middle East relations or disease and virology. They're sitting there and you see their Cuisinart blenders behind them. You're like, really? You had nowhere better in your house to set up except with your kitchen appliances behind you. Still amazes me what people choose as their backdrops, and to each his own, to each his own. By the way, speaking of people on television and obnoxious things, I want to get to the news stories of the day, but I put this up on the Twitter last night. Some of you on the Twitter right now, the X as we call it, some of you can go comment, like, and share it. I pondered this question. I pontificated. I pondered it around and puddled it around in my head, and I want to float this by. This could be a question of the day someday in the future. Who are the most annoying liberals, females on television? I think we all go to The View. The View, we all know The View. Most of us wouldn't know The View because we're too smart to watch it, but Fox News and all the places, the talk shows hosts all play cuts from The View so that you know what they're saying, which really gives them more attention than they deserve and more relevance than they deserve. But hey, The View has to have somebody watching it, and so they watch it in the newscast. That's what they do. Outside of the old battle axes on The View, I was watching last night as I finally got back to my hotel, and I was catching up on some things, and I have things recorded. I can pull them up on my iPad from my home network, and I was watching things in the hotel. I'm doing all these things, and Jessica Tarloff, she was on, I think it's the show called The Five, because I turned it off immediately. Jessica Tarloff is this liberal woman there, and I don't think there's anyone more condescending, more smug, more hateful, just more indignant than this woman is. As a matter of fact, she ought to be on The View. That's how bad she is. And the fact that Fox News ever gives her a platform, I don't know who she had photos of, but she's really an idiot. I mean, she was replacing, because I guess Harold Fox, who I like, is a great pragmatic Democrat. I disagree with him a lot of times, but he at least is thoughtful, and he doesn't come across as condescending. I know they said he was out and Jessica Tarloff was filling in, and that's all I needed. I grabbed the remote control and I said, "We're out of here. We don't watch Jessica Tarloff. Not in my house. We just don't do it." Not that I don't like different opinions. I just can't stand her. She is I use the hashtag on Twitter, every man's ex-wife. That's the hashtag I use to describe Jessica Tarloff. Anyway, feel free in the chat rooms if you'd like to agree or disagree. Is outside of The View, is there anyone more annoying, condescending, and just irrational than Jessica Tarloff as she appears on Fox News? My question, my opinion, feel free. Maybe you're a big fan of hers. I'm not. I tagged her in the post, and therefore this is probably why I don't get any hits on Fox News, outside of just I'm the redheaded stepchild of conservative media. Other than that, yeah, it's on my Facebook, my Twitter feed last night. All right, good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here. Let's dive into some of these topics of the day. Going to be talking about fentanyl here in just a bit. I've done a couple of shows on our Critical Mission podcast. Interview with Sabrina Jankowski, whose son died of fentanyl poisoning. Duke Rumley, who has a group called Sober AF Entertainment. He deals with people. Just my goodness, I'm looking over the monitor, and I've got to change it. Jessica Tarloff just showed up. They call her a 5 co-host, and I mean this sincerely. I cannot watch her. She is just. If you can be a happily married man and want to get divorced just by hearing her. That's how bad she is. I went to the Weather Channel. I am not joking. She is really bad. Am I wrong? Help me out in the chat room. Am I wrong to have such strong and adamant feelings about the Jessica Tarloff? I literally just changed the channel. I'm watching. Evidently, it's going to be about 34 degrees right now in Montgomery, Alabama. Now, there's a in Raleigh, that's what they're going over right now. And Missoula, Montana, it's 31 degrees right now. That's how much I can't stand watching and seeing Jessica Tarloff. It causes me pain and angst. All right, the founder of the fentanyl test is coming up here in just a moment. And it's a new dip test on fentanyl, which is fascinating technology and science. And we'll talk about the fentanyl epidemic. One of the reasons we have to close down our southern border. One of the reasons that Joe Biden failed America is that he did not do anything really of significance or at all to crack down on the flow of fentanyl poisoning into this country. And we've done a couple of interviews with people that deal with fentanyl and fentanyl poisonings in the sober world, and trying to get people not even to try drugs, but if you are to try drugs, be careful where you get them. Those are the critical podcast. The Sabrina Jankowski comes to mind. Duke Rumley, Ben Court also was a great interview there about the world of drugs. But fentanyl is a poison that is coming over by the communist Chinese, perpetrated by the narco-terrorist state of Mexico. That's not really a good friend south of us, and terrifying them to hell for all I care. I mean, they can't even figure out a plumbing system to where they can flush their toilet paper. I'm sorry, I don't have to treat you with much respect. Thank you. I go to Africa, and there they have plumbing systems where you flush your toilet paper. Now, you may have to bring your own toilet paper, but they can at least flush it. Mexico, the trash can. Yeah, they can't even figure that out, let alone border security. I digress. We'll talk to J.C. Shepard for the fentanyl test here in just a moment. That's coming up. And have you been reading this fascinating stuff on the JFK assassination? I mean, it is pretty obvious that what happened on that fateful day in 1963, just 12 down the road from where I'm at in of Dallas, Texas, is we had a coup by an unfettered, unhinged, unmonitored agency called the Central Intelligence Agency, and that's why they've been hiding this all this time. It really is fascinating to watch. what happened when JFK fired Dulles, who they still named an airport after him. Probably should rename that. If you're going to rename McCarran Field Harry Reid International in Vegas, I'm thinking the name Dulles might need to come off the airport in Washington, D.C. I mean, if you're digging into this or reading into the synopsis of what they're discovering about this JFK assassination, it is fascinating to see what was going on and the cover-up, and not just the cover-up. Notice we say cover-up. It's not like we just unleashed this. It's not like this just came out. This is stuff that the government has known for years. This is stuff that has been tamped down, pushed down so deep, and they didn't want you to know it. When I say they, I'm talking about the powers that be in the government. And the fact, and this is another fact, you can go back and since the days of Kennedy's assassination, we went to LBJ, and then you go to Nixon, you go through all the presidencies. The fact that none of the presidents out there fought or wanted the American people to know the truth lets us know about this elite cabal that must run us. Why is it that it took Donald J. Trump 60 years later to finally say, no, let's release the files? Let America know that these bureaucracies that we say are too bloated, too big, waste, fraud, and abuse in Washington, it's been going on for a long time. There was fraud and abuse happening at the CIA back in 1963. And the fact that these politicians and these bureaucrats don't want you to learn about the fraud and abuse that happens in Washington tells you that some of them are probably in the know about the nefarious actions of some of these politicians, and they want it to be tamped down way, way deep. If anybody else has been, following this JFK assassination release that happened 48 hours ago, less than 48 hours ago, it is really telling. I mean, it's not. There was a CIA involvement. There's been a lot of talk about that, but just the lies that have been told, blatant lies in the narrative, and how many people for years and generations have just been over and over and over again told these lies, pumped these lies, the narrative that you have been fed and the narrative that you were taught. It came from Hollywood. If you dared to speak the truth about it, you were called a conspiracy theorist. The phrase grassy knoll came from those of us who became conspiracy theorists because you just have a grassy knoll conspiracy. No, it's by the papers, it was evident that there was other things happening there on that day in Dealey Plaza, and the truth is just starting to come out. If you haven't watched it, you need to study it, and this is case in point once again why you must you've got to don't question us when we question the media. If they lied about the assassination of John F. Kennedy Jr. for 60 years, how much longer did they want to lie about Dr. Fauci, the little effer? How much longer would they try to keep other things secret from you? They didn't want you to know the truth about the booger cootie virus shot in the arm that you were supposed to get or lose your job. They didn't want you to know about the coming from a Wuhan lab. They didn't want you to know that Dr. Scarf and little effer were not necessarily telling you the truth. Think about that. If they will lie about something as epic as a coup by the CIA against an American president, you have to start questioning everything and say, what else are they lying about? And thank God for President Trump, whether you like him or not, at least he finally thinks we're big enough kids in America to learn the truth about what our government has done, even up to the point of committing murder. And if they will commit a murder to keep their bureaucracy and their power going in Washington, D.C., if they'll commit a murder of the highest elected official in the world and in the nation, just think how little regard they think of you and I in tossing us out to the viruses out there or to the pharmaceuticals or to whatever. They don't care. If they will commit murder of the president of the United States 60 years ago and try to keep it secret, what else? What does that show their regard in some of these bureaucracies and powerful agencies for human life and for the citizens out there that they're supposed to represent? You got to follow it. It's very, very interesting. In just a bit, I'll have some audio. We'll do this after my next guest, my first guest this morning, who's running a little bit late, but I just got a message. She'll be here in just a second. But I want you to hear the words now that we know that what JFK was talking about. He was talking about secrecy, talking about secret societies. He was talking about the cabals in Washington, D.C., that he was in a constant fight. And then I want you to hear an interview that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did about his uncle and his uncle's view about the CIA and how some actions that he took against the CIA were literally months before suddenly JFK was snuffed out on the streets of Dallas. So it's going to be interesting to hear those in the context of what we know now, going back to what was running through JFK's mind. And it's telling. You've got to start checking out what they've been hiding from you. All right, here's a question of the day. President Trump tweeted, or he truthed out the other day, that these crazy-ass judges that are obstructing everything, oh, you can't deport them, you can't do this, you can't. All the powers that have traditionally, since the founding of our country, been held in the executive branch of government. Sudden we have these progressive radical judges that hate Trump, and they don't like the changes and reform that are happening to our corrupt government. And so they're saying, injunction, you can't do that. Remember, we sent the nasty Tren de Aragua and the gang members down to El Salvador, and the judge said, stop, turn that plane around. And they said, sorry, it's out of American airspace. They don't have to do it. They just took off and headed down to El Salvador. Well, I guess there's a hearing on that today. But these judges have stepped in, and it's one or two judges in particularly, and they are judge shopping to get the right people on the cases. Well, I have to tell you that Donald Trump said, hey, we should impeach him. And Chief Justice John Roberts came out and said, that's not the way we do things. Impeaching judges is not how we do things. And so people are saying, what role does I think it was Hugh Hewitt, commentator. Sometimes I agree with him. Sometimes he's just a fake. He's just a neocon many times. And I've met Hugh before. We used to work in the same network. And so I've met him. He wouldn't know me from Adam because I am the redheaded stepchild. But a lot of times he has really on point, really smart guy. And a lot of times he's just dumber than a box of bricks, my opinion, because he says dumb things. And he says John Roberts had to say what John Roberts said because John Roberts has to defend all the judges. That's like saying a member of Congress has to defend everybody in Congress or defend all of their staff. No, you don't. You're there to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States. And that's really the only thing that John Roberts has sworn allegiance to. And that's not to protect the sanctity of all these judges down there that are activists. It's just not what they're meant to be. Well, Trump says they should be impeached. My question to you is, should these judges that continually impede, continually become activists, continually get overthrown, overruled, but they're continuing to just gum up the works of operation and basically think that they are the executive branch and that they can impose their own will, and the executive branch doesn't have executive authority, should these judges be impeached? Now, John Roberts says no. Hugh Hewitt, a conservative, says no. There's a lot of people say no. Don't even worry with the impeachment because impeachment happens in the House, then they'd have to be removed in the Senate, and it's never going to get that far. So let me ask you, should they be impeached? Is impeachment, does it have any effect? Does it have any chilling effect? Would it cause these people to lend a pause to the next time they want to just become obvious that they're sabotaging President Trump and his agenda? I am just asking you, do you think that these judges should be impeached? That is our question today. Yes, impeach, no impeach. You tell me, especially knowing that it will not actually they won't be removed from office. That's what's going to happen. It would go to the Senate and there could be a trial, but they probably would not be removed from office. And if they could remove them from office, I think it would send a sign, all you got to do is impeach one or two for getting outside the bounds of the Constitution. What they also need to happen, if impeachment doesn't happen, is these things need to be appealed post haste to the Supreme Court, get all the way up there, and the Supreme Court needs to have a very strongly worded opinion giving full rebuke to these judges for not understanding the Constitution of the United States. That's your question of the day. Should we impeach or not impeach these judges? Lauren Boebert from Colorado has come out and says yes, she's going to jump in on the impeachment articles as well. There's a couple of members of Congress that have jumped in and said that they will do the impeachment. Let's see, who's this? This is Representative Brandon Gill, Republican from Texas, has introduced actual articles of impeachment against U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, who tried to stop administration from deporting Tren de Aragua members over the weekend. Trump recently struck a deal with El Salvador President Nayib and to detain some violent illegals in the Latin American country's notorious but highly effective Seacaught prison, and deported a few hundred Tren de Aragua gang members to the facility on Saturday. But Boasberg tried to block the move, even verbally ordering the administration to turn the plane around midair. That's when the Venezuelan or the El Salvadorian president went oops on his tweet and said, oops, we didn't do that. Gill is a congressman from Texas, presented the article impeachment to the House, accusing Boasberg of high crimes and misdemeanors in the form of pursuing political gain while blocking Trump's constitutional prerogatives and enforcement of the rule of law. The resolution, the commander-in-chief has broad authority over the executive branch, including authority to protect the nation, which includes the Alien Enemies Act, which he used to deport the Venezuelan gang members, get them out of our country. And if Venezuela doesn't want them back, we'll put them in El Salvador. They'll hold them in their prison, but they're not going to be here. Gill, the congressman, is arguing that the judge is ignoring explicit rulings from the Supreme Court and has illegitimately tried to substitute his own judgment for that of an elected president. That marks a violation of his oath to the Constitution, said the article's impeachment, and duty of impartiality to the people of the United States. That is your question of the day. We're going to count the votes. Do you think that these judges need to be impeached? Now, they probably will not be removed from office from the Senate, but is an impeachment enough? Do you think to maybe send a signal that, hey, you can't just make up rulings about what the executive branch powers are? They say, well, this is a 200-year-old act that has not been used in a couple of hundred years. Well, so what? It's still there. It's still available. And so the president has enacted that. So give me your thoughts. Some of your people are coming in with some thoughts. I'll read some of them now. Peggy says, we need to pray for these judges. We should pray for these judges, but should we pray and impeach? It's like trust but verify. Should we pray and impeach, or should we impeach and then pray? I don't know. You tell me. Jim says there needs to be a way to hold activist federal judges accountable, but I'm not sure impeached. There may be, but I believe that's a constitutional thing. Now, one of the things they could do is prevent judge shopping. And I think it's, who's Alan Dershowitz. Dershowitz has a plan in which he says the way that people are granted cases, that could be done without a constitutional amendment. So there probably should be some restructuring in Congress because the term of the judge and the term of the office, all that stuff is set in the Constitution, but realigning districts, realigning protocols and assignments, all that stuff can be set up by Congress, and that could be done. Anthony says they need to be investigated but not impeached. I guess you would have the House Judiciary Committee. It's a system of checks and balance. A House Judiciary Committee could bring this judge in and investigate. By the way, this judge is fascinating. This judge's daughter, I believe, I think Boasberg is his name. I believe it's Boasberg. His daughter is actually a community activist. And I don't know if she's an attorney, but she works for pro-illegal organizations, helping them try to keep their status here in America and able to not be deported. That's what his daughter does. Evidently, his wife, when she hosts tea parties and Tupperware parties or home and whatever parties she's hosting, pampered chef parties, whatever she's doing, when she hosts cocktail hour, she has members and spouses from people in the Obama or the Biden cabinet over to her house. So these are not nonpartisans. These are very partisan people. And obviously the partisan activities of his wife, this guy may not be a bad guy, but he's probably got a nagging old hag of a wife, maybe, and maybe a nagging daughter, and he doesn't want the wrath of them. I don't know. Maybe he's married to Jessica Tarloff, speaking of nagging people. I'm just asking. All right, so should they be impeached? So far, no one. Well, somebody said impeached. Anthony says but not impeached. Jim says in Colorado, we vote if Colorado local judges should be retained, but then it becomes a question of who will they be appointed to replace by who is the governor. We could get worse than what's there. Well, we don't vote on federal judges. That's not in the Constitution. They're appointed and with the advice and consent of the Congress. That is a constitutional matter, and you cannot just willy-nilly change the Constitution by having a vote tomorrow in the U.S. House. There's only certain things you can do right now, and the systems of checks and balances that the government has, it's even investigation has no teeth unless you're willing to carry out a punishment of the investigation. What are we investigating? If we find out what, then what do we do then? Congress has no authority to discipline a judge or it's a system of checks and balances. They can impeach, they can remove. I guess they can call them before, but then I think because it's the judicial branch, a separate but co-equal branch of government, they can actually refuse to come before the hallowed halls of Congress. So I don't think they can even be called in for a hearing if my understanding is correct, because that would violate separation of powers, and you have to have separate but co-equal branches of government. So Congress doesn't have a lot of power to investigate a federal sitting judge. There could be an impeachment trial. That's how you could get an investigation. I'm not even sure if you just had a hearing that the judge would have to come. I would guess not. I would guess that would violate the separation of powers. Unless you were willing to impeach, I'm guessing you're not going to get anywhere. Obnoxious Scott said the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution are now proving the failure of the Department of Education, the actions of these judges. Scott's drinking again. No, just kidding. No, the founding fathers were brilliant, but Congress, if Congress would investigate and stop, they're supposed to give advice and consent. How do you have a guy appointed by Obama, whose wife hangs out with Obama, whose daughter is a political activist of her own, trying to keep illegals in the country? How does a guy like that, with a background like that and ties like that, how do you get those people confirmed? That's a political guy. That's a political family. Clarence Thomas took a lot of heat. I didn't know his wife was political until after the 2020 election, and then we found out his wife is pretty political. I didn't know that. At the time, she wasn't, but this guy went into the office of judge knowing that his wife and kids were all pretty political. So I don't know, my friends. What do you think? That's the question of the day. Lauren Boebert from Colorado says yes. Mr. Representative Gill from Texas says yes. They have filed articles of impeachment against one judge. John Roberts says no, that's not how we handle this thing. And conservative commentator Hugh Hewitt says that's not how we handle it. Give me your thoughts. Go to the chat room, wherever platform you're on all the Facebook pages that we're streaming on, all the YouTubes right now, you can get there. On the Rumble, you can comment as well. Love to hear what you're saying about the topic of, you ready? Should we impeach these judges? So far, most of you say no. Interesting. I thought for sure you guys were going to be circling like sharks going after blood in the water, is what I thought so far. Jim says, would the judges be better if they still had to wear white powdered wigs? I don't know. It could help with there's some kind of a trans joke in here somewhere that I'm missing. I need writers. We could write a trans joke right now. It would, yeah. All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. Nice to have you. Comment, should these judges be impeached? I'm going to come back, talk a little bit more about the JFK assassination files, things we're learning. We're going to go back in the vault here in just a bit and hear some audio of JFK talking about the CIA, who turns out looks like assassinated a guy. And we'll talk about that coming up. And also Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about inauguration of his uncle when he was 6 years old and what he remembers about his uncle's disdain for the CIA and the military-industrial complex, and how all that tied up from the warnings of Dwight David Eisenhower when he said, beware the military-industrial complex. Remember that? And then all of a sudden, JFK decided to fight against that complex, and he lost his life. And these files are quite fascinating. As a matter of fact, I'm in Dallas, Texas, as you know, right now, usually in Colorado in my studio there, but traveling here, and just 10 miles down the road, 12 miles down the road, Dean Plaza, that's where it all went down. And it looks like it was a CIA op. That's what these files show. All right, we'll talk more about this. J.C. Shepard is my guest here. He's the founder of the fentanyl test. As I mentioned earlier in the program, on my other podcast that produced Chad Do the Critical Mission, we've had the opportunity to interview some fantastic guests. One of them is Sabrina Jankowski, whose son was poisoned by fentanyl, and she found him dead in his bed one morning after his birthday. He'd had no clue that his something he had taken had been laced with fentanyl. We talked to Duke Romley, who's trying to provide, through Sober AF Entertainment across America at venues, safe places where you don't have to explore drugs, because you never know what has been placed on those. And fentanyl, people call it a fentanyl overdose. Most people are not overdosing on fentanyl. They're getting poisoned by fentanyl. And I think that's a key descriptor. And I'm going to bring J.C. Shepard in, the founder of the fentanyl test. You have to realize how much of a crisis this is. Fentanyl is the number one killer of Americans ages 18 to 49. It's the fastest growing killer of children under the age of 14 in America. And J.C. Shepard's going to try to save some lives. J.C., welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's always a pleasure.
Good to have you here. First of all, founder of the fentanyl test. I want you to kind of talk about the fentanyl test. It is a dip test, and kind of talk about this technology.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, you hit it on the head. That we find through our market research and our actual statistics that 87% of the overdose deaths that are reported in the media are actually fentanyl poisonings, and I'm glad that you were able to designate that. So, but given that, we have two different types of tests. One is an over-the-counter. It's the first FDA cleared and CLIA waived urine dip card, which means that parents can buy this in Rite Aids. They can utilize this to test their children to see what they're actually having in their bodies. It really was designed for probation and parole because those are the only individuals that we find at a very high level are actually seeking out fentanyl because probation, parole, corrections officers, they're not testing for fentanyl because before our testing, it was just far too expensive. You have to get a lab involved, and you're talking about $350 to $750 per test to be passed off to the taxpayer to pay for it. So that wasn't happening until our test. Our test we can get to the government for under $10 with a lab backup, so we can save them money, and they're 99.7% accurate, down to 1 nanogram per milliliter, which is the lowest on Earth. The second test we have is harm reduction testing. It'll test any surface or any substance, meaning that police officers that pull somebody over, corrections officers that have this in a prison, anything they're finding that has a residue, a substance, they can utilize our test strip. They can actually rub this test strip onto the surface. They can use this in any powder, any broken pill. They can use this in drinks even. So drug users also can use this, Jimmy, to where they can test their substances for fentanyl, and you would eliminate a mass amount of these poisonings that we're seeing because they'll know down to 1 nanogram as well, which is, again, we're the only test on earth to reach that for harm reduction. They'll know that that is the fentanyl is present. And just an FYI on this, why we have been failing as a nation and as states and localized government on the fentanyl epidemic is because before our tests and what almost every single state is utilizing right now, the drug user, if they wanted to test for fentanyl, they have to dump their entire substance they just purchased in water to test it. No drug user is going to do that. We find that under 5% of drug users, they're being poisoned on a daily basis, up to 400 of them a day. They will not do this. I mean, it's common sense. Someone going to buy cocaine is not going to say, hey, guess what? Before we use this, let's throw this in water. And then, I mean, the substance is gone. You do that with methamphetamine, it's gone. You do that with heroin, it's gone. So those individuals, if they actually do utilize that test, what are they going to do with it? They're going to shoot it into their veins because it's already mixed in with, a watery substance. So we wanted to design something that was common sense used. Our test, you run the test strip through the entire substance or surface that you're testing, again, including liquids. Then we have a buffer that we provide with each test kit that you drop three drops of this liquid onto the test strip itself. And then, within 3 to 5 minutes, over 99% accurate down to 1 nanogram, which is smaller than a grain of salt, that if there is fentanyl in your substance, and it will save nearly every single life that does this correctly.
Let me ask you a question. We hear nanograms, and my understanding is it takes just, I don't know if it's a nanogram or 2 nanograms, kill a person. It can kill a whole bunch of people. If it has that it's just unbelievable amount. Help us understand what is a deadly dose of fentanyl.
Okay, so if you have pure fentanyl by itself, nothing else mixed with it, which you're really never going to find, that is, like you stated, 2 milligrams. Now, 2 milligrams, just to put it in perspective for people watching and listening, if you have a penny near you, pull out that penny, look at the date on that penny, and just imagine that covered up with white powder, the date only, not the whole penny. That little bit sprinkled over top of that date is enough to kill almost every single person with a regular body mass index. So that's what it takes for pure fentanyl. Now we're finding as low as 3 nanograms when it's polysubstance related in terms of saying it's mixed with methamphetamine, mixed with really anything, Adderall, any other polysubstance environment. That could be heroin, that could be any other reagent. You can be with 3 nanograms, you can lose your life. I mean, the lowest that I've seen is 3 nanograms, but we're seeing in our Facebook groups and such where toxicology reports are coming back from people that have been poisoned, and we're finding 7 nanograms, 5 nanograms is that's their toxicology level for fentanyl. So literally the smallest amount of this can take your life. And There's also other threats. There's nitazines, there's xylazine that's even 50 to 100 times stronger than fentanyl now. And people don't have the way to test for this. We do. We've created now a new 4 panel that we're actually releasing now. But until then, cartels are so very creative to get this across the border. They're finding something else that isn't going to be detected in fentanyl testings and analogs. So
Oh.
we're trying to stop everything we possibly can, working with Maha, working with the Trump administration, and we're going to start making waves here incredibly soon.
Have you noticed, or is it too soon to know? The Trump administration has declared these cartels as narco terrorist groups. I think the entire government of Mexico should be given 5 or 6 months and or declare the whole nation a narco terrorist state and take care of them accordingly. That's how disastrous our allies in Mexico have been. Ridiculous, but just my opinion. But is it too early to know if these border clampdowns have started to slow the fentanyl across our southern border?
So it is. I mean, it's very early, obviously, in this, but the problem is, Jimmy, is there's enough already here to kill every American at least 20 times over. I mean, I was just on Newsmax the other day in Ed Henry's show, and he stated that we caught 2,000 pounds this year at the border. 2,000 pounds of fentanyl would literally wipe out this country multiple times over, Canada multiple times over, and probably Mexico as well at the same time. So that's the problem with this. There's so much here, and to be quite frank, I think the entire world and certainly the cartel in China knew that Kamala Harris was not going to beat President Trump in this election. So that last 6 months when she was running against him, the cartels certainly worked a lot harder to get a lot and as much as they possibly could, across that border and the Canadian border as well. So it's not going to go away anytime soon. Certainly, it's getting much better with a tighter border. There's no doubt about that. But the cartels are just going to get more creative. They're going to find more deadly substances to bring in here, and the border patrol can only do so much. I mean, obviously, they can test
Yeah.
people if people have powder and such on them. That's great, but you have legitimate businesses that they're disguising, fentanyl as Skittles. They're disguising these things as candy that unless you break open an entire stash of, a truckload coming across, you're not going to know. So it's that's why testing is so important.
Yeah. I don't mean to drag you into the world of politics should you not want to go there, but obviously fentanyl has been a crisis, a growing crisis. And we talk about the leading cause of death, 18 to 49-year-olds. We're talking about the growing crisis of people under the age of 14. Were the politicians, let's say, that have been in charge of Washington, D.C., were they just ignorant to the danger that was coming across our border? Or it seems as if that would have been obvious. We got to stop. We have to do everything possible to protect our kids and stop this killing spree with this fentanyl. And it seems like they did nothing and actually made the problem worse. Any guess as to why there was such a lack of willingness to pursue the problem?
I mean, yeah, and unfortunately, politics goes very much in hand with this discussion at all times. I mean, it's been politicized, of course, to on either side, to be honest with you. And I'm kind of glad it was. I mean, you never want to politicize deaths, especially the deaths of children, but that's the only way to get awareness out. So I think a lot of it was something that people just didn't understand, didn't know that it was such an emerging threat. I mean, the Trump administration did, but then we got the Biden administration, which, they said that we couldn't even get a secure border without, a bipartisan bill. And then obviously what we've seen, and Trump said himself, all you needed was a new president. So, that's the Biden administration was so lax on the border that that's a main issue. Now, there's some politicians, to be honest with you, Jimmy, that profit from fentanyl. It just depends on what boards of companies that they're on, with pharmaceutical companies and things. So they don't want it to go away, which is why you have these 16 Democrats that went against the Halt Fentanyl Act. I mean, I understand that it's hard to take something away from the medicinal world, which the Halt Act does, but there are multiple painkillers that are just as strong as fentanyl that can be used. Fentanyl is generally only for end of life pain, very, very bad burns, and severe trauma in a clinical medicinal setting. So that has been warped, as we all know, into illicit fentanyl, and you have individuals with pill presses here that are not pharmacists, not biologists, not chemists, to where they know how much the human body can manage. the cartel certainly isn't down there with their employees looking to see, oh, this might kill a person, so let's make sure we don't put that in it. They don't care. They've already been paid by China to get it across that border. So that's the whole aspect. I mean, you got to take it away. And I think those 16 Democrats, I'd like to audit where they're getting paid from in terms of royalties and whatever boards that they're on, because I'd imagine it has something to do with their tie-in
Yeah.
to whatever type of company. So
those campaign donations sure go well along with, don't they? They really. I don't know if
indeed.
you saw pop across the bottom of the screen there. Peggy popped up a comment a second ago, said many of the people in Congress are making money on fentanyl, which is exactly what you were talking about. The fentanyl test, you are the founder of the company. A lot more technology coming our direction. When is this going to be available for the public use and consumption?
So it's available right now, thefentanyltest.com. You can go and get them there. We're also in Walmart. We're in Rite Aid and such. Although we're obviously very much cheaper than retail. I mean, you can get if anybody wants to do a urine test on their child, you can go and get one of these for I think it's $20 on our website, which it's going to be probably 30 to 40 in retail. And then harm reduction testing, you can get them as low. We can get them as low as the government to the government under $1. But you can go buy a box for retail on our website for $79.99, and that gives you 25 harm reduction tests. So they're very, very, very priced to be used, because our goal is to not get incredibly rich off of these. It's to save every life that they can encounter. And we just need the states to share that sentiment, because right now what they're using is completely, I almost want to call it worthless and a scam, to be honest with you, because again, no one's using them, and they're throwing $1 billion a year at this, and it hasn't worked. It's not going to work until you actually change with innovation.
The fentanyltest.com. JC Shepard, I appreciate you hopping on. We'll have you on again sometime. I'm glad you made it. I know you're running late. We appreciate you jumping in here into the House of Lakey and the Lakey Unleashed Streamcast. All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Jaime Lagos. Jimmy Lakey is my name. I mentioned the podcast, the Critical Mission Podcast. We also have other content. And by the way, the Critical Mission Podcast, YouTube, anywhere fine podcast are heard. You can just look up my name and you'll see my mission, or missioniscritical.com is the website, and you will see all things that podcast of producer Chad I started last 6, 7, 8 months ago, and that is up there as well. But also we have content available when you don't play on the show in full entirety. We have some content available on the Patreon page, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey, patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. And I want to play for you a snippet of an interview that dropped if you're on it's behind the paywall, because some of the times we talk about people like the little effort, Dr. Fauci, we talk about pharmaceutical companies, and it's things that a lot of these internet streaming companies like YouTube don't like us talking about. And the moment you have an honest conversation about China or something, they will shut you down, and we've been shut off YouTube at least twice since this show started. So these are longer form interviews as well. Shane Jenkins, January 6th prisoner. That interview dropped 2 weeks ago. We just dropped one with Rabbi Daniel Schubach, and this is him talking about it. It's about mental health crisis in America, and he goes back to the study and the teaching of Viktor Frankl, who was an Auschwitz and Holocaust survivor, and he kind of revisits the teachings of Frankl. And this is up behind the paywall. It dropped this week finally. Patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. This is a snippet of my interview with Rabbi Daniel Schubach talking about Viktor Frankl and the mental health crisis we have in America. That's the framework, the context. Let's just play a snippet of this, and I hope you'll go subscribe. Patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. There's a free version of subscription, but the paid version, $9.95 a month, is what gets you actually access to the full interviews that are there. There's a whole library of interviews already there. Roll the tape, producer Chad. To be suffering greatly. Why is that? Why can't we get this right? What are we doing wrong that's not improving the problem?
It's a lot of hyper individualism. I think there is a lot of focus on self-love, self-affirmation, self-esteem, but not on what we need to focus on is help people find more meaning in their lives. Viktor Frankl, I wrote my book about Viktor Frankl on the psychology of the soul. He was a Holocaust survivor. He was in Auschwitz, and he made a remarkable insight. He said that people that believed they were going to fulfill some meaning in their lives, some value after the camps, were most apt to survive. And he went on to write his book, Man's Search for Meaning, a very inspirational book. And he basically talked about the fact that psychotherapy, even before his time, was going in the wrong direction. It was pointing towards the self, where he says we have to point beyond ourselves. Things like values, loving kindness to other people, creativity, courageousness, and so on. And we also have to focus on experiencing new things in life, like loving someone, caring for somebody else, kind of like fixing something else in the world. Many of my clients say to me, I don't get my needs met. I said, the question is not what are my needs. The question is, what am I needed for in life? And that's where Viktor Frankl really wanted to change psychotherapy. So on that note, I believe he was really prophetic, because today's demand is for people to find more meaning. And when they do that, they get much better, much more quickly as well.
So there you have it. That's the interview with Rabbi Schoenbach. It goes about 35, 40 minutes, I believe, if I'm going from memory. And it's available at patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey fan page. /Jimmy Lakey. It's Facebook /Jimmy Lakey fan page. But it's on the screen. Just pay attention to the screen. Don't pay attention to me. I make no sense sometimes. Patreon.com/Jimmy Lakey. Love to have you subscribe. It's $9.95 a month. There's a lot of great assets back there. We'll call them assets. A lot of great interviews have already dropped. I've got another one we're recording. I didn't record anything this week because of my travel schedule and all the stuff that I have to do here, but I'll be back in my studio on, I think, Tuesday, and I have a big recording that will drop next week. So give you the content. I think you'll like it. And these are long form interviews. So when you're watching the show, most of my guests are on 6 to 8, 10 minutes. That's how long we have them. They're quick hits on this show, the Daily Update, but those are long form interviews, and you can kind of sit back and listen to them like a podcast, but you listen to them at your own pleasure at the Patreon page. People ask me why don't we do a podcast version of that. Because we're trying out platforms. We have the Critical Mission out on the podcast form. We have the Streamcast going, and then we have the Patreon, and we're just trying to saturate as many different and kind of get our feelers out in all different kinds of programming, and that's what we're doing. So, well, yay us. Yes. All right. Good morning to everybody, wherever you're listening to us at. I know a lot of you don't listen to this show live. We watch the numbers throughout the day, and we check the regions where they come in from. And a lot of you don't listen to matter of fact, our largest audience is not our live audience. The largest audience that we have is in the next, from what time is it now? It's okay, 46 after the hour. The largest audience is going to be the next 7 hours. We will triple, quadruple, bazillion. It's going to populate where we end up with a lot of people. We're listening in the afternoon. Good morning. We're from the past. We're glad to have you, and we're pleased that you listen to it whenever you can. A lot of folks listen to it in their lunch break. A lot of folks listen to it, watch it maybe on the drive home in their afternoon commute, because good radio is hard to find anymore, and so they come. So whenever you're listening to the program, we do appreciate it. We really do. Producer Chad and I do appreciate your support and love, and we like that you're here. So whenever you're listening, namaste. Is that namaste? I don't know how to say it. I'm trying to be hip and cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me bring up my friend Chef Roger. I brought him in earlier this week, and he is hosting a dinner that him and his wife put on several a year. They do it out of the kindness of their heart. Speaking of Viktor Frankl and finding things to support, Chef Roger does this all the time. He's hosting one in Erie, Colorado this coming Saturday. It's for Heroes Outdoors. I'm going to screw the name up.
Hometown Hero Outdoors. Hometown Hero Outdoors.
Hometown Hero Outdoors. See, I've got too many notes in front of me. Welcome back, sir. It's in Erie, and we talked about it. I know we had a John told us that he bought a ticket after he heard you on the other day. So hopefully that came through. Talk about the dinners. It's at your home. You won't get the address till after you buy the ticket, but it's $150. It all goes to the charity. And let's talk about why did you start doing these kind of dinners, sir?
Oh, Jimmy, thanks. And we really appreciate it. And thanks for that question. We got started during the height of COVID. And it's kind of a sad story. I'm going to try to keep my allergies from kicking in, so I apologize. But a guy that I know up in Greeley, he had a very tragic thing happen to him. He owned a restaurant, and we all know during COVID it wasn't very friendly to restaurants. And his son had graduated from high school, and he had a full ride scholarship, and he tragically passed away in a car accident. And I didn't know what to do, how to help him and his family. So one thing I do know how to do is I know how to cook. I don't have many artistic talents, it's artistry is not my gift, but I can throw some things together, and I can cook really, really well. So I called up all my friends. I said, I'm going to cook everybody a dinner. I said, stop by an ATM machine, pull out what you're comfortable with, come to my house. And I had a bucket by the front door. And I said, come to my house, come to dinner, put what you can, put it in a bucket. And we came up with about $5,000. And we took it up to them, and we helped with, we tried to help with some of the funeral costs. And when they had the gathering, we provided some food and drinks for them, and we did what we could. And from that, I said, well, we can do this, and we can do it at a larger scale. We know one of the things that charities have a hard time doing is coming up with money, raising money. And we've thought about, creating our own charity organization, but charities, I don't want to compete with charities. They all have a hard time raising money. So I want to be a fundraising arm for charities that we really believe in. So we said we want to go out and find charities that we really believe in, the charities that we want to support. And so we started going out and looking at charities we support. Rivers Promise is one of them, what we really believe in. And so from that, we started hosting dinners, selling tickets directly from the charity. We don't touch the money. And so since that time, we've raised about just over $350,000 directly to the charities. We don't know the number exactly because we never touch the money. Afterwards, we ask, roughly how much money did you make from the dinner? But since we don't touch it, we don't really know. And they kind of give us a rough estimate of what they make. Sometimes it takes them a little bit to kind of, tally up the numbers from the auction items and all those kinds of things. But from that time, we've raised just over $350,000 in charity contributions to the different charities that we've hosted. And we host different numbers of dinners throughout the year. Sometimes we've done 4 or even 5 dinners. Sometimes we've done 3 dinners. Depends on what our schedule allows for.
And you do these out of the kindness of your own heart. You go and procure the food. You don't even pay yourself back out of the money for your food costs. I mean, everything, whether it's the open bar or the soft drinks or the whether it's a pizza night or whether it's meat on the pig on the spit or whatever, you cover the cost out of your own pocket.
Yeah, and so it's a little bit different than going to the grocery store for us. So I go fishing in Alaska every year, and I bring back about 100 to 150 pounds of halibut and salmon. So a lot of the things we serve come out of my freezer. So I do a lot of the butchering. So I like to hunt. So I've served a lot of elk meat. I've served wild boar. I've served, a lot of things that we serve come from things that I've harvested. I'm also involved in a company called Infinite Harvest. So a lot of the vegetables we serve come from that company. So we're very particular about the food supply. So it's not like I just drive down to the local grocery store. So it takes me several weeks to prepare everything. And so, yes, we know that all the supply of all the food, and we provide everything for the charity. So when charities typically have a gala or they have a golf tournament, those are big costs to the charity. And so you have a gross and a net. And so if they have a golf tournament, those are very expensive for them.
Yeah.
So how much money they raise, they get a percentage of that. So when we host a dinner for them, 100% of the money goes to the charity. So if we raise, $15,000, they get $15,000. If you have a golf tournament and the golf tournament raises $20,000, $12,000, that may be the cost of the golf tournament. So whatever we raise, all that money goes to the charity.
All right, this Saturday, it's a great cause. Everyone's invited. Your home is in Erie. The address comes whenever you purchase a ticket because you don't want stalkers and things like that. I get it. It's my life. No. So talk about the charity, why it's near and dear to your heart. You only do a few of these this year. It's Hometown Heroes Outdoor. There's outdoors. Why is that such a great charity that you're willing to put in so much effort and energy to support?
So we are very particular about what charities we support, and Rivers Promise is one of them. We only pick charities that we really look into. So we pick particularly veteran organizations and organizations with children, and it's not just any veteran organization. We vet them all very carefully. We look at how many is it volunteers, is it paid? They have paid staff. what do they do? How do they, what do they let us get involved in the organization? You know, because there's been organizations that we've talked to, and they say, okay, well, we'll take your money, but we don't want you to be involved. So that kind of raises some concerns for us, you know, things like that. So we're very particular about who we get involved with and who we donate money to. So when people come to our dinners, we want them to know that not only are you giving money to an organization, we've carefully vetted, because in the past that's always been a concern of ours. When we donate money, where's the money? Is it going to an organization that we can trust? Hometown Heroes, they do great things. You know, they take veterans, first responders, and active military. They get them out engaged in outdoor activities, building that camaraderie, things that are really needed. But it's also an organization that we have vetted. And if you're trusting us, that we trust them, that we have vetted, and it's a great organization, and they do a lot of great things for people. I've gone as not only have we vetted them, I've actually gone on and done a few trips with them. I have a disability rating through the VA, and but this is an organization I care greatly about, and I'm greatly appreciative of everything they do.
And they do exactly what the name says, Hometown Heroes Outdoors. They
Yes.
get people that have for their country outdoors adventures, and maybe fishing trips, and maybe camping, hiking. They get people outside to outside of the bubble that they're in, and kind of out in the community, and a community of people that have been through things like they have. Maybe it's a hog hunt, but they get these veterans outside and breathing some fresh air.
Yeah, and I tell you, there's nothing more therapeutic than getting somebody, at least for me, getting out on a stream with a fly fishing rod. And the other thing is, some of the veterans, they don't know how to do these things. So sometimes it's giving them the tools if they've never been fly fishing before. And to me, fly fishing is very therapeutic. If they've never been fly fishing before, it's giving them the tools and teaching them how to go fly fishing. So maybe in the future they can go fly fishing and find that therapy on their own.
All right, this Saturday, so 48 hours away, roughly Saturday evening, at the home of Chef Roger, private estate, palatial estate. Okay, private home in Erie,
I don't know about
Colorado.
that.
He's hosting this great dinner, and Chef Roger knows how to cook. I've been to these dinners, and you need to check it out. Get a ticket, hometownheroesoutdoors.org. Get your ticket today so that they make sure they start the preparation. They'll work 24 hours with their chef team getting the food together. Get your ticket. They're $150, if I have it right, and $150 of that goes straight to the charity. Chef Roger never even touches it. You're
I'm already
buying it
cooking.
straight to the charity. He's already cooking.
I'm already cooking now. I've already built the 3 sauces for the sauce flight, and I love making sauces. So I've already built the 3 sauces. They're right now emulsifying together. So I made homemade mayonnaise to make an Alabama white sauce. So everything's from scratch, and I don't like store-bought mayonnaise. So the mayonnaise is one of those things that can be kind of funky. So I used a walnut oil and olive oil, so it's all healthy, and it's not like what you get in the grocery store. So those are the kind of details we pay attention to. You're not going to find this in a restaurant.
Maha, make America healthy again.
That's
it's
right.
hometownheroesoutdoors.org. Go to chapters, the Colorado chapter. You can see the ticket. Chef Roger, I hope that people will come and tickets and see you Saturday. hometownheroesoutdoors.org/chapter/Colorado. Just go to Hometown Heroes Outdoors. $150, my friends. Help them out and go. It's a great dinner. I've been there. He's raised a lot of funds for, I think last year, I want to say $16,000 in one night. Went to Rivers Promise, and one of our food problems we had over there, it all within 24, 48 hours, it's boom, out the door, feeding kids in Rwanda. So they do great work. hometownheroesoutdoors.org. That's where you buy your ticket, and it's in Erie, and it's a wonderful, easy trip to do for the Saturday night. Give yourself something to do. All right, coming up in just a second, we're going to have our aviation expert, Jay Ratliff. There's some things that we're going to have to push off till tomorrow. We got a little late start because J.C. Shepard joined us late. Producer Dad, play this. I'm going to tease. Tomorrow I'm going to play, and I don't think we'll have time to do it today. Would you play the RFK Jr. talking about, again, this revelations of the JFK assassination is basically in 1963, 10 miles down the road from where I'm staying. I'm pointing that way, straight in downtown Denver, downtown Dallas, Dealey Plaza. an American coup happened, and the government finally, under President Trump, decided they've all kept it secret all this time, protecting the institutional corruption of what was then in the CIA and maybe still is. And we never cleaned house, so there were no consequences for what happened. And therefore, if you don't fix the infection that happened in 63, what infection was still there in 73, 83, 93, 2003, 2013? What infection was still there in 2023? You be the judge. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about, and I don't have time to play the Kennedy speech because we're waiting the arrival of Jay Ratliff, but this is RF Jr. talking about his uncle and the CIA and what's now become obvious, CIA involved in the death of JFK. Go ahead.
Early on, that the purpose of the CIA and the intelligence apparatus was to create a constant pipeline of new wars. Eisenhower, who was the outgoing president, gave what is probably the most important speech in American history, which was, where he warned against the military-industrial complex. I was at my uncle's inauguration. I was in Washington that day, a 6-year-old boy. And 2 months later, military and intelligence came to him and said, we got to invade Cuba. And he was like, I'm not going to Cuba, and I'm not going to let the military. And they said, well, we got all these Cubans trained, and they're going to go attack Castro. And he said, well, the U.S. government can't be doing that. I don't like what Castro's doing down there, but it's not the United States' job to dictate what kind of governments other countries have. And they said, well, as soon as they land, there's going to be a big revolution. Everybody's going to rise up and they're going to overthrow Castro. And he said, we can't use the U.S. military. And they ended up bringing those guys over. And in the middle of it, in the night, they came to him and said, they're getting wiped out on the beach, and you need to send in the military and invade. And he said, not going to do it. He stepped out of that meeting, and he realized they had been lying to him and trying to trick him. And he said, I want to take the CIA and shatter it into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. For the next 1,000 days of his presidency, he was at war with his military and intelligence apparatus. They tried to get him to go to Laos. He said, no. They tried to get him to go into Vietnam. They said that we need 200,000 combat troops. He refused. Everybody around him wanted to go into Vietnam. He sent 16,000 military advisors. They weren't allowed to fight. Many of them did. They violated the rules of engagement. In October of 1963, he heard some of his Green Berets had been killed over there. And he said, I want a total casualty list from Vietnam. And his aide came to him and said, 75 Americans have died. He said, that's too many. And he signed that day a national security order ordering all troops out of Vietnam, U.S. troops. And then a month later, he was killed.
So we've talked about it often on the show, the military-industrial complex, and looks like history telling that the JFK was cooperating with the warmongering powers of the military and intelligence community, and that's what these assassination papers are showing. And again, if you didn't root out the disease and the infection from 63, what happened in 73, what happened in 83, go on forward. And it's very important. And thank God we finally get the release of these documents. All right, let's switch gears here. We're going to come back. I'll revisit that tomorrow because there's some powerful words I want you to hear now, knowing what we know framed of the JFK speech that I have the audio for. And I want to play that for you here in just a moment. But our aviation and travel expert, Jay Ratliff, is on the horn. Good morning, Jay. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Yeah, I go back and listen to that JFK moon speech probably once a month. It was a thrilling speech that he gave, and it was always fun because the scientists said we can't even get a rocket to go up straight, and you want us to go to the moon and back? Yeah, it changed everything.
Yeah, and wanting him to get in wars that weren't ours, and it looks like from these JFK releases from the Trump administration, that might have got him killed, is what it looks like. So some scary stuff happening back in 63. All right, Jay Ratliff, let's dive into some topics of conversation. Aviation travel expert, jratliff.com, jratliff.com. Jay, Southwest Airlines, once again in the news, sir. They just can't stay out of the news.
Well, they got 4,000 flights a day. So what we had that took place was an aircraft that pulls into Reno, had a laptop that overheated and caught fire. And remember, we were talking about Southwest a couple months ago, might have been November, when they had that fire in Denver, where passengers had to go out on the wing because of a cell phone that had overheated. And we keep talking about these lithium battery personal electronic devices that continue to overheat on aircraft. And there's two things to note on that. One, this is the reason we always want to keep them out of checked luggage, because if one of these things overheats in the cargo compartment, we can't get to it in flight. And the fire suppression systems on today's modern aircraft are not always adequate to put out the lithium battery fires because they burn at such a high temperature. So that means when you're in the gate area and they say, hey, we'd like to check your bag, or we have to, they're going to ask you that very important question. Do you have anything, if it's a vape pen, if it's a computer, if it's a laptop, a iPad, anything that might be lithium battery powered in that backpack, you have to remove it. And if you say, no, I don't have anything in there because you forgot, you're in essence placing your life at risk and other people as well. And we see what happens with these when they catch on fire in an airplane. Flight attendants have to use their training. They've got many of them the fire suppression bags where they're going to be able to extinguish the fire. But it's happening at such a degree that you have some airlines around the world that are banning some of the things that take place or that basically carry on to the aircraft. I don't know how to pronounce it, if it's Air Busan or Busan. They've got a power bank charger that is attributed to catching an airplane on fire and totaling the aircraft. Now, fortunately, it was on the ground when it happened, but we're seeing a lot of carriers saying, look, we're not going to take the risk. You can carry these things on, but you're not allowed to plug them in and use them because they tend to overheat.
Now, the Southwest Airlines plane that was diverted to another city because the laptop battery caught on fire, that person had obeyed the rule, I guess, so there's nobody
it was
trouble
on
here.
Yeah, it just happens. And, we've seen these things. There's a YouTube video out. It's a number of years ago that some college or high school kids walking through an airport with a backpack, and his backpack just explodes into flames because his computer overheated and caught on fire. And that one was such a good video to watch. He was okay, but it showed just how fast things got out of hand. And he was, I think, walking through an airport or someplace when this happened. And can you imagine something like that, to that severity, with that rapid succession that happens on board an aircraft, where time is of the essence to make sure that those flames are contained as quickly as possible. So we're never going to ban lithium powered battery items from aircraft because too many of us fly with them. But we talk about it all the time, and it's a scary, scary thing. And we're getting closer and closer and closer to some of these injuries becoming fatalities if this situation continues to evolve. And certainly that's what we're striving very hard to try to prevent from happening.
All right, let me rapid fire a couple of more quick topics for you. We talked for the last several years, even on the radio, you and I talked about bad news for Boeing. Boeing got some good news recently.
They did. Japan Airlines came out saying they're going to buy, I think 17 or something of the Boeing Max airplanes, which is nice. I think the list price is $125 million a pop. They'll get those at a discount, but it's good news for Boeing. But if I can tie the Boeing and Southwest topics together, some of the Southwest leadership was saying, these 737s, they're kind of big for some of our markets. We might need to look at another type of airplane. Now, look, anybody that knows Southwest knows the only thing they've ever flown is a 737. That's not technically true. When they bought AirTran had some Boeing 717s, so they did have those for a period of time. But it's a 737 fleet. So can you imagine being at Boeing and hearing one of your main aircraft purchasers, your customers say, I don't know if these 737s are going to work out in the smaller markets. Because if you're Southwest and you've got a 737 that goes into a regional market, and it really only justifies 70 to 80, maybe 100 seats, and you go in there with a 150-seat aircraft, you've got too much. So you either have to eliminate the service altogether and pull out of a market that could make you money with a smaller aircraft, or you have to start thinking. Now, you and I could have had this conversation a year or 2 years ago, and we'd have just said, nah, not going to happen. But look at all the changes Southwest is making. Assigned seats, never done it before. Premium seats, never done it before. Check bags, paying for bags now have to pay to fly in some cases. Never happened before. So the idea that Southwest could actually look at another type of aircraft, I'm telling you, my friend, it could happen.
That's been part of their success early on, is that we had one type of aircraft, one type of mechanic, one type of parts bank. I mean, it really helped streamline the fast turnaround.
It was brilliant. You're exactly right, because your pilots only had to train on one type of aircraft. Flight attendants, only one type of aircraft. So you save money on maintenance, on training. All the ground equipment didn't have to be different equipment for different sizes of aircraft. So it streamlined everything, and it was brilliant. Plus, they flew in and out of a lot of the smaller airports, so they could use that silver revenue tube maybe 4 to 5 times a day, when other airlines were using them maybe 3. So they were getting an extra segment per day out of their aircraft. And look, when you're flying, well, now about 4,000 flights a day, but when you were looking back then, an extra flight a day for revenue, each one of those, man, it added up big time. And then they got the brilliant, corporate office idea of flying into LaGuardia, and let's really beef up our presence in Atlanta and all these places that are known for delays. And you're thinking, why do businesses always want to deviate from what's working?
Yeah.
To do something that, we haven't tried that. It's like, please don't ever go into the bomb disposal unit profession. Oh, let's cut this wire and see what happens. I mean, it's stupid, but we see it constantly with corporate leaders, and they wreck, or at least derail, some incredibly good companies.
Yeah. I have a buddy who is, I know, listens to the show, walking around the Denver International Airport as a supervisor or a big boss man. And he works for a particular airline. And there's been a couple of times since I've known him that I'm like, what happened at work today? He goes, oh, I got punched. You have a viral video that shows a passenger punching a Washington Dulles gate agent. If you didn't see it, or I didn't know a friend that's been hit a couple of times or had things thrown at him, I would say people don't behave this way, but they do.
Oh, I've had people reach across the counter and grab me. I used to wear a clip-on tie. So that way, if they reach for me, at least the tie came off. Plus, for safety out on the ramp, it was always a good idea to have that. But yeah, this 54-year-old is getting into a verbal discussion, argument with the gate agent at the Washington Dulles Airport. And this guy just turns his passenger, one punch, boom, and down the guy goes. Totally knocks him out. It was a down goes Frazier, and the guy did not move. They had to take him to the hospital. The man gets arrested, the passenger. He's going to face assault charges. Thank you. He's going to be fined by the FAA probably $10,000 or $15,000. Thank you. He's never going to fly United Airlines again, and he may face a civil lawsuit on the part of the employee. But here's the part that you and I've talked about, where it stops and I get super ticked. This man is going to be banned from flying United Airlines for assaulting an employee, and he should be, for life. What about all the other airlines where this guy can fly Delta, fly Southwest, American, Allegiant, JetBlue, all the Frontier, without any problem at all? Now, this guy is a known problem. On video, he's assaulting an airline employee, and yet we're going to allow this individual to fly on other airlines. Now, airlines have been asked in the past, and we've talked about it, about sharing the information on the people that they have banned for assault and other serious type situations, where a passenger's been punched, a flight attendant's been punched. I mean, something super serious. But airlines have said, well, the cost of initiating and maintaining that kind of a database would be, in essence, too expensive. And those same idiots will stand in front of a podium bragging about how their employees are their number one priority, or their passengers are their number one, or safety is our number. That's a bunch of crap. Because if you really believed it, you would never allow somebody like this 54-year-old who took down an agent at a United Airlines that had to be hospitalized, and let him just skip on over to another counter and fly some other carrier. That never, ever, ever should be allowed to happen.
Jay Ratliff, I see storms moving across. That looks like the headed east out of Colorado looks safe. I'm in Dallas right now. Fly out of here tomorrow. But what's it like moving about the country, especially if we're headed east today?
Yeah, the week that we've had the blizzard, right? I'm telling you, fortunately, it left most airports alone. Minneapolis got hit yesterday, but today it's going to be Chicago and Detroit that are going to be the airports impacted the most. I think the delays are going to be minimal, but it's still going to be something that's going to be kind of mess up the work just a bit. So it's not a horrible weather day, but there's going to be some challenges. So if you're scheduled to fly to or through Chicago or Detroit, make sure that the airlines have a way to get a hold of you.
Jay Ratliff, always a pleasure. JRatliff.com, RATLIFF, JRatliff.com, aviation travel expert. I'll be flying tomorrow and back, headed back to the glorious state of Colorado. My goodness, producer Chad, we did not get to many things on our lovely menu today. I'm going to come back tomorrow. Tune in early tomorrow. Remember, we started at 8 o'clock in the Mountain Time Zone, 10 o'clock Eastern. And I want to get to this JFK speech. I think it's just quite amazing to go back in history and realize JFK was signaling us back in 61, 62, 63 about these secret societies known as the Central Intelligence Agency. And you just heard RFK. We're going to explore more as more and more records come out on the JFK assassination. I don't have time to get that. I do have a Tampon Tim story I want to get to, but before I get to Tampon Tim, hey, could I tell you, I saw cherry blossom festivals in Washington, D.C., people out touring. Looks beautiful in D.C. right now with the cherry blossoms out. Listen, it's a great time. Spring is here. This is the first full day of spring. Spring is here. And this is a time a lot of folks are thinking about real estate. Heading into the summer, kids are going to be out of school soon, and they're wanting to make a move. They're wanting to upgrade, downgrade, improve. They're wanting to do some things and maybe get a better home, a better neighborhood. Maybe you're getting transferred. Listen, now is the time to start thinking about it. Even if you're not ready to list your home now, you do need to start taking steps to get ready to list your home so you can list it as quickly as possible. And you need to have the expert advice and outside set of eyes to kind of help you guide through the process. Sherry Cree, you can see her right there on the screen. Homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. She wants to be your realtor for life. In other words, she doesn't want to just have one transaction with you. She wants you to say in 3, 4, 5 years, you need another bedroom, you're coming empty nester, you want to downsize, you want to move out of state. She wants you to think, who do I call? Oh, I got to call Sherry. It's time for real estate. I got to call Sherry. It's time for real estate. Listen, Sherry believes, and I know we've talked about it often, that real estate can be the way that you build up generational wealth. You hear me? Use your real estate transactions wisely. Talk to Sherry Cree. Talk about not just the plan for this home, but the next home and where you see yourself in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And let Sherry get you on that path. Listen, now is a great time. You can list your home now and you're ready to go. The inventory is actually quite low right now. It's going to start increasing as more people list. So listen, if you want to get your home listed, she can talk to you. She can talk about staging. She can tell you how to get your home ready for listing. Listen, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com, anywhere under the sound of my voice in Colorado. From the Wyoming border, I'd say up Wellington Way, all the way down that I-25 corridor. Hello, Castle Rock. How you doing down there? Back to Boulder in the east, back to Parker, Castle Rock. You get the idea. Aurora, she'll make sure, as I say every day, she'll make sure you avoid the Tren de Araguas. I think we've already shipped them to El Salvador, but she'll make sure of it. Listen, Sherry Cree, Ascendant Real Estate, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. There's the photo. Make an appointment with her, have a conversation, have a consultation. It's all complimentary. And by the way, if you're a first responder, you're a veteran, you've served your country, you're active duty military, she will reduce her compensation, her commission, so that you get to keep more money in your pocket. And by the way, she'll also take a portion of her compensation or commission, and she will donate a portion of hers off to a charity of your choice. So you want to give to your church, a charity, she will do that on your behalf. She has a special love for people that are caregivers and for seniors out there, and she'll take special good care of you. And again, all of you military, first responders, veterans, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Give her a call and talk about your real estate dreams and talk about your real estate future. And now's the great time to be in touch if you're thinking about summer and spring for real estate, moving, buying, selling. You get the idea, homeswithsherry.com. All right. We had a question of the day that's out there, and a couple of comments have come in. Should these judges that are obstructing executive authority and trying to, I saw the meme on I think there's a Babylon Bee headline that President Trump or Elon Musk or President Trump bring the astronauts back, and a judge steps in and says, you've got to send them back to the space station. They're not allowed here. We didn't get permission. That's how bad these activist judges have gotten. And question of the day, should they be impeached? Chief Justice John Roberts says that's not how you do it. Lauren Boebert, Representative Gill out of Texas as well, Boebert from Colorado, have filed and jumped on, and other congressional Republicans are jumping on articles of impeachment being filed against this judge for his judicial activism. So far, not a lot of people have said we should be impeaching. I think showing that we're true principled conservatives. Robert says, yes, they should be impeached. But if you go back up in my chat about 9:30, about 45 minutes ago, Ray said this, Jimmy, impeachment should be, and this is what I think most conservatives think. Impeachment should only be used when everything else has failed. I believe it should go through the appeals process before they impeach the rogue judge. Let SCOTUS have its say. And I think that's how most conservatives, the Democrats will throw the word impeachment and they'll impeach President Trump over a perfectly good phone call because they have hatred in their heart and not a real believer in the Constitution. But I think Ray is right. Impeachment should only be used when everything else has failed. And they need to get this appeals process underway and the strongly worded rebuke from a higher court judge. And that would be a very beautiful thing. All right, Tampon Timmy. Let me do this story and then we'll start wrapping it up for the day. Tampon Tim, the Minnesota governor, has been out. I don't know if he's on a press tour. Did he write a book? I don't know. But he's been getting a lot of media. I think he's trying to kind of float himself as a new leader of the party. And I don't think anybody in the party thinks of him that. And those of us that aren't in the party, the Democrats, we kind of laugh and think he's a real buffoon. Well, he's out there. And this is what's wild. Not only did he bizarrely always wave his hands in the air, not the way, just weird. Not only did he put tampons in the boys' bathrooms in Minnesota schools, but he's now out there. I don't know what he thinks he's proving, but I think it's a bad look. If you haven't heard the story, failed vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, also the governor of Minnesota, added just another part of you go, thank God we avoided this idiot. He's out there basically celebrating the problems that it seems the bottom line of Tesla has had. The firebombing of cars, the burning down of dealerships, the stock prices going down. He's even saying, if you own one of these, take the dental floss and take the logo off. We know it's not your fault. He's celebrating an American-based company that's based in Texas, suffering in the stock market because of Elon Musk facing backlash from disgruntled, crazed, mad, bat crap crazy leftists. And Tim Walz is out there celebrating this. Have you ever known somebody that wants to be a leader in a political party in America? Do you think that they have you ever known somebody that just celebrates when an American company is suffering? When an American company is suffering? Because who makes up this American company? Elon Musk is not in the factories here in Texas building the Teslas. Elon Musk is not in the dealerships selling the cars. These are real individuals with real families paying their bills. Some are probably Democrats. Some are probably Republicans. Some probably don't like Elon, but this is a good paying job. And Elon moved them to Texas because they could actually operate their plant during the COVID and get past some of the regulations that California is putting on them. Elon's putting people to work, and Tim Walz is celebrating that the company could be having financial woes, or at least is getting hit in the stock market. And by the way, who invested in Tesla? There's people that probably their 401k money is in the Tesla stock. There's people who have portfolios that probably have a chunk of Tesla in them, and they didn't even purposely buy it. They're just there because it has been a good stock. And here you have Tim Walz, this evil man from the Democrat Party, from this doofus state of Minnesota, out there celebrating the struggles and perpetrating the struggles that actually are hitting Tesla right now. If there's ever a moment in time to tell you that we have dodged a bullet and that Tim Walz never, ever, ever is a heartbeat away from the presidency, thank God Almighty, we are spared of this buffoon, and buffoon is exactly the way you should describe him. And it's really bizarre watching this freak of nature out there making these jokes about an American company which employs American citizens, which gives American jobs, celebrating that maybe they're having a tougher time than they were a year ago. That is evil in the heart of man, and I guess it's on display by Tampon Tim. One more quick story, talking about the judges. Ron DeSantis, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. He is putting out a statement that Ron DeSantis of Florida took the social media platform X yesterday to offer a historically plausible solution to the federal judges sabotaging President Trump. DeSantis says Congress has the authority to strip jurisdiction of the federal courts and decide these cases in the first place. Moreover, the governor noted that congressional Republicans dropped the ball on this issue. He says Congress has the authority to strip jurisdiction of the federal courts to decide these cases in the first place. He says Congress dropped the ball. They teed up. So we'll talk about this tomorrow. I'll try to get John O'Connor on to talk about what can be done for these crazed justices. Impeachment's not necessarily it. I agree with most of you out there saying this, but also there are actions that Congress can do as a separate but co-equal branch of government. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm still in the great state of Texas. I will do one more show from here tomorrow morning, and as soon as that show is done, I will hopefully, good Lord willing, be heading off to the airport to return back home after being here over a week, I believe. I've been here forever. I think I've been here forever. Whew, long time been here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, thank you, Sherry Cree. Thank you, 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning. God bless you, Corey Clinton. We appreciate you. River's Promise. There's our charity. Patreon, don't forget the Rabbi Schoenbach interview is up there. Patreon.com/JimmyLakey. Until we meet again, God bless you. God bless America. Save those meetings for tomorrow, producer Chad. We'll do them tomorrow. I'm Jimmy Lakey. Peace. I'm out of here.